Well, hey, everybody, glad to be with you again on another interview with one of our experts that I have just recently met in the last few months. And I'm super excited about this interview because there's a lot of synergy, and we'll talk about that today. And today's topic is the impact of meaningful employment environments. And we're gonna explain all that, flesh all out, because our guest today is an expert in this and really working hard at this. And I just want to introduce him to you real quick. And his name is Ben Green. He's a seasoned people leader and expert in guiding organizations through building meaningful employment environments. And with extensive experience in HR and operations leadership, he's dedicated much of his career to leading teams and enhancing workforce environments. People focused, results oriented leader with a proven track record of transforming organizational policies and cultivating world class workplaces. He's the COO of TrailPath, whose sole mission is to help organizations navigate the workforce challenges of today by creating environments where trust has been established, fundamental needs have been met, and the environment is participative and the work is meaningful. Their interconnected technology platform, NextPath, which I'm excited to chat about that, drives improved organizational decision making, scales leader behaviors, and increases team member participation. So that's all about Ben, but I have a returning co-host. My friend Blanca is back with us today, and I'm super excited about that. And she's the founder of Pronto One LLC, where she helps companies eliminate cultural barriers and improve team dynamics and boost employee retention. A former banking executive and an accomplished marketing leader, Blanca has led business growth and earned national recognition across multiple financial institutions. Originally from Mexico, now rooted in Dayton, Ohio, she's a passionate community builder, certified Maxwell leadership coach, and a key leader in the greater Dayton community transformation movement. Blanca's work includes mentoring youth, empowering professionals, and serving on numerous boards and networking groups to foster leadership, connection, and growth. I'm in a room with greatness, folks. Just FYI. So, so welcome to you both today.
No, thank you,
Thanks, Chris.
Chris.
Here's what I'm learning. The better the leaders and the more experience everybody has, the longer the bios. And it's hard to condense all the things, right? Like
And that's why you're
Well,
not reading your bio, right, Chris? Because it's so long.
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
people are just used to hearing my voice. So but no, we're
no,
super excited. And Ben, we met through a friend, David Noe, I
yep,
believe, mutual contact, and he said you two are very much aligned, I think, in what you're doing and your approach, and there's some cool things that could happen. And so it's always great to be connected that way. And Blanca, you're a major connector, I know, and always connecting people. So I'm glad you're with us because I had the privilege of connecting you now to Ben. And so we've been having some conversations about all this and what we're going to talk about today. But Ben, really, the focus today is on you sharing about this meaningful employment environment concept because I think a lot of people, when you hear that, who wouldn't want that, right?
yep. No,
So
spot on.
before I guess my point is before we jump
Yep.
into all the solutions you guys offer, give us some backstory on your career and how you got to this point where you are today and why this topic even ultimately matters.
No, perfect. Well, Chris and Blanca, it's, always the favorite part of my week when we just connect all the time. And I listen to you read my bio and I sit back and I was like, man, I need Chat GPT to write something different because you have way more experience th than me. So I'm humbled to be, just always learning from you as we talk every week as well. So I'll get on that right after this call. But no, so Chris, that's a perfect question. So my background is I spent 20 years in logistics and supply chain, HR degree background, but grew up in operations, where the fun happens, the fires get put out all day, every day. And that got to experience some time in consulting and visiting hundreds of different companies throughout my career in the consulting world. And so with that, what we realized is that there's a lot of really good stuff out there. It's not always, targeted towards the frontline workforce, but and so there's a gap with that. But there's ways we can help improve our frontline workforce and help create stability for organizations. So as we've moved on through our career, we left and had a good time. We were trying to figure out what is next inside of this, and organizations started to call us, some of our past customers, and they're saying, "Hey, we've got a turnover problem." and we can't seem to figure out what is going on. Will you come and check us out? And so we were walking into facilities and we started to really dig into their, policies and how they lead and how they grow. And we realized that the stuff that's being applied inside of the white collar workforce, for lack of a better phrase, isn't always being applied to the frontline workforce. So when you think about autonomy and control and people having some control in their lives, right? Like we know we need to be there at specific times to make sure trucks get loaded or service customers if we're at a front desk, but we can provide them the feeling that, hey, when I need time off, I have the ability to request that and it's flexible. And we're applying this into the part of the world, but not the others. So it caused us to go and do some real deep research. We got some behavioral psychologists involved. And we came out with a framework, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes, but it's
Mhm.
what we call the meaningful employment environment framework. And we took that and we said, okay, well, there's a million really good leadership coaches out there. There's a million really good leadership training pieces that, hey, what we found isn't entirely unique in a lot of senses. It's what we've been teaching about, maybe some different languages. And we said, how do we actually take that and scale this? And there's some elements that we'll talk about here in a few minutes, but that is kind of the
Yeah.
history of we just got called in to see where we could help, and then what was unique about it, and we built that framework, and that's where we started.
No, and that's awesome. And the reason that I wanted to connect Blanca to you was because Blanca and I have been having conversations because with her work and consulting and coaching, her heart is for a lot of the frontline workers, especially those that are Spanish speaking, right, Blanca?
Yep.
And then
Right, right.
trying to help them develop and grow. So why don't you speak to that a little bit because of what you've seen and noticed over your career?
The 1,000%, which is why I love talking to Blanca, 'cause she's educating me, is the data inside our system is starting to tell us that, first off, we have, millions of Hispanic speaking team members in a workforce that work for an English speaking leader,
Hmm.
which creates a natural barrier that we need to help solve for our team members. And what we're finding is statistically speaking, a Hispanic team member wants to learn and grow at the same percentage and rates that any English speaking team member does. But there are some cultural differences that we're seeing. They're a little bit more traditional, respectful in terms of not wanting to interrupt and jump in, but they still want to have the same types of interactions and leadership connections that you and I may have. So I may not, care about
Yeah.
interrupting somebody. And so how do we help team members and meet them where they are and their types of personalities to help the organization grow? Because the reality is we all know a diverse workforce is the best type of workforce for productivity. So how do we let everybody be themselves in the workforce and also have that voice too?
Blanca, what has been your experience? Because you had some stories you shared with us a few weeks ago that made this all connect.
Well, I have to say that when I talked to Ben, it was kind of like eye-opening to where the employees on the front line, what they do is they don't have the opportunity to raise their voice. And sometimes, as you know, they might have the solutions to the problems from the CEO, the CFO. The front line, sometimes they have the solutions for them. And that's the way that the communication has not been, it's always a communication from top to bottom. But if they open the opportunity to have the voice of the employees to be raised up from bottom to top, the solutions could be there, and that you will have motivation, teamwork, and the most important thing is eliminate the turnaround, because you are actually letting your employees tell you the solutions for your problems. And when
Mhm.
I talked to Ben, it was an eye-opening to see that there is a tool where you have the ROI very clear and how you can improve communications from top to bottom, but from bottom to top.
No, absolutely. And it has. It's been a super exciting conversation we've been having about this because one of the things that I know, and it's funny because as I met Ben, I was also meeting a couple other leaders and I actually met another gentleman last week with another tech solution because what's happening, I see, Ben, is people are starting to realize, we've had, like you said, there's all sorts of leadership training and content out in the world, but then when it comes to how do we apply technology with that, and now everybody's obviously thinking about AI these days, and how does that play into where we're going in all sorts of aspects of our lives and businesses, but I think at the heart of it, if you still go back to the meaningful employment environment that you are focused on and having tech support that, not tech being the driving force in of itself, but that it, because a lot of people make technology the point, right? You
Yep.
all and what you're doing and working through and developing continually is making sure that the technology makes that workplace environment what you see a vision for. So why don't you share with us what is that meaningful employment environment? Like what does that how do we shared a little bit in your bio, but kind of jump into that of what it looks like and how companies can really benefit from it and what you're building your company around.
Perfect. No, thanks. And just a side note, just because you touched on such an important point, is technology is not here to replace leadership. Leadership is a one-on-one personal interaction, and the coaching that you're providing is the personal trainer to make sure those behaviors are being held accountable to. The technology of NextPath is just how do we help scale this? And so to your point on what a meaningful employment environment is think about, put yourself, it doesn't matter what your role is at any organization. I've grown up in big companies and small companies as that's gone through. But when you think about those four main pillars that you touched on at the beginning, is the trust has to be established. And we think about our stories and our potential and our development. If you don't trust the people that you work for, nothing else matters, right? You're not going to share, you're not going to participate, you're not going to work to your fullest, you're just going to do enough to get the job done and go home. Maybe not even to the best of your ability, depending on your personal level of satisfaction to that. So we have to establish trust and we have to build trust in the organization. And then when you start thinking about our frontline team members that may have been at several other jobs where maybe there was no trust, they're coming to us with all sorts of baggage, right?
Mhm.
So they're not going to naturally, I trust Blanca because we've talked and gotten to know each other, but team member coming to Blanca in a frontline workforce, they may not trust her at first just because nothing that she's done, but because they have issues in the past. The second part is, which companies have done really well, but we start thinking about safety. So physical safety, so the fundamental needs of everyone, we want them to go home well. So safety, emotional safety, especially in today's world, as we're starting to understand more, and the science is understanding what emotional safety is for team members. And then listen, pay is a thing. It's not the only thing out there, but pay is a thing. MIT's come out with research that the living wage, obviously adjusted for different areas of the country, is $25 an hour for two families working. So for a family of four. So it's $25 an hour. We're not going in telling companies they need to go pay everyone $25 an hour, but hey, how do we create an environment where we can pay people that, right? From participation. Then we get into the environment piece of that, is how are policies deployed? Do people have community and friendship at work? That's an element of staying inside of it or staying at an organization. And then lastly is how do we take ownership of our work so we can make it better and we understand the purpose of, the next customer, whether it's an internal piece or an external piece. And just a really cool side note, I was on site with a customer as we were talking to them and helping, and this team member was telling us about his career, and I was asking him about it and how he grew up, and they talked about one of their companies they were doing distribution for a protein bar that goes to the grocery store, and the understanding he had that the work he did was to make sure that that protein bar made the grocery shelves. So when his parents were asking him what he did, and they're at the grocery store, he's like, "See that's there because of me."
Mm.
So it's not always heart transplant stuff, but people can see the fruits of their work. So the environment is those four things, and it's an ecosystem, right? It's not linear. New leaders come in, organizations change, that trust goes up and down, policies can change, environment stuff happens, you move spots inside the work. So you can go up and down in this. And that's what we call, so the second element of this is what we call our decline to thrive index. So today, every team member is in one of four spots. They're either declining, in which they're going to get out of your organization as fast as possible, maybe at the lunch break, not going to come back, or they're surviving, which means they're either actively looking for a new job or they're passively looking for a new job because they don't see either trust and development, or they don't understand why the strategy of the company, they don't understand the purpose of their work, and they can't make it better. Or team members are getting to that growing and thriving stage where they think it's going to work out or they can't imagine being anywhere else. So there's one in four spots. What we are finding today through assessment work is 47% of our frontline team members across any organization are sitting in a declining or surviving state. So just think about the problem statement. There's 47% of our team members may leave us at any time. Coincidentally, frontline turnover is 40% in a lot of industries higher inside of the first 90 days. So we always ask the question is, do you actually have a team if 40% of your team is turning over
Mhm.
every year? And so we have the framework. We understand our people are declining, surviving, growing, and thriving. And then we say, okay, well, how do we lynch this all together? Which is where, Blanca and Chris, where I've learned so much from you, is the leadership behaviors that are tied to this, because each one of us is very unique. The three of us have very unique backgrounds as we grow and change and evolve in our personal lives. What we're looking for in a career changes. So then how do we create a path for each individual? And how does that actually get managed by an organization as well? So, right, you're sitting at a, logistics and manufacturing place, and you've got 100 people on site. You're at a bank system, and you've got, a banking company organization, and you've got 15 tellers that come in and out every day. Is how do we actually manage everybody's unique preferences to help them grow and thrive within an organization? So
And
those are
that,
the three pieces, and I'll stop
yeah,
there, Chris.
no, that's
So,
great. I mean, no, but as you're talking, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but as you're talking, I'm thinking, in my book, The Magnetic Leader, the first essential action I talk about is meeting needs of your people. And as you're
yep,
talking, I'm thinking, just like you said, and you said a little bit ago, is how do you scale that? Because if you've got, I mean, if you've got 15 people, it's hard, but if you've got 150 people or 1,500 people in your organization, it just becomes impossible, right? Like in just just because time is limited, right? So how do you
yep.
structure your organization in order to meet those needs? How do you get to know those people? Because one thing I always tell leaders in my coaching is, the most effective leadership is customized leadership to the person you're leading. Whereas I think a lot of times what happens is when you get bigger and you have all these, so many people and it's so broad and wide in the organization, everybody wants that one size fits all approach. And the reality is it doesn't work because we're human beings and we all have unique personalities, unique backgrounds, all the things you've just talked about. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges for leaders today is I think that I want to give leaders a benefit of the doubt and say that most leaders want to be a good leader. They want to take care of their people. They want to lead well. I think where they run into problems is they just don't know how. Maybe they haven't been led well. Maybe they haven't been trained well. So there's that side of it from the education and training first, front end of it. But then it's even if I have, how do I do this and cascade this through the organization? Because like you said, what happens at the executive level or the corporate level, in the office structure, that tends to be where a lot of this emphasis is. And then the frontline workers, whether it be in manufacturing warehouses, my son's, 17, he's working for an electrical company, they're out on the job site and, there's a bunch of electricians that are out in the field all the time. So how do you lead them? And, so I just keep thinking about all industries have this challenge. And like you said, credit unions, banks, just office environments in general, you don't have to have a lot of people for this to start to feel overwhelming. So that's why I'm excited to jump into this next question with you, Ben, is how have you then taken all this that you just talked about and started to apply technology so that the scalability starts to be something that's manageable?
Great question. And it ties, right to your last podcast too on the 80/20 Pareto rule, right? So
Mhm.
leaders, especially frontline leaders, specifically, a lot of times they're doers and they're also leaders. So it's how do we prioritize? Because we have to meet the needs of our customers. Think about frontline leader inside of a credit union, at some point you have to grab the teller at some point and
Mhm.
take the next customer. So you can't just spend all of your time leading, but there are important things we need to do. So that's why we invented it, that's why we invented NextPath, right? So it's how do we take this to make sure that we're having the right interactions at the right time about the right topic with our team members. So these one size fits all approach aren't scalable. You have 15 direct reports and you're being mandated by, HR or your operations team that you have to have a one-on-one every single week. Well, guess what? 35% of your organization doesn't want to meet with you every week and talk about things, right? That's not their preference. And it depends on, tenure of the company, what people are trying to look to do and grow. And I like Chris, how this is why we're always so aligned. He said benefit of the doubt on the leaders that they want to be good leaders. And we believe team members want to be good team members, right? They
Mhm.
want to show up and work and do a good job every single day. And leaders want to lead and be good at what they do. And so it can be daunting when we start saying you need to have interactions with team members and have these. And what we're my favorite part is as we do this is leaders come back and say, man, I've actually been having them, just not good ones in the past, because I didn't know what to talk about. Now I do. So NextPath was created with a little bit of some micro learning, which can be used or not used for our organizations. Make sure we're all just talking the same language. So what does trust actually mean inside of an organization? What does owning your work actually mean inside of the organization? And then, so quick snippet, micro module, just know what do I need to know? What do I need to understand to improve on? And then how do I go take action to improve that myself as a team member and leader? How do I go have a conversation with my team members about that?
Mhm.
So we start off with some learning pieces for our organization. As we're teaching our team members, we're teaching them how to fill out their path forward for themselves, or what we call my path. So how do I like to interact with my leader? How do I want those interactions to be? Do I like recognition? Do I like coaching? Do I like goals and obstacles? Um, how do I like my work preferences today? So as we're making decisions inside of an organization, leaders can use data to have interactions. It doesn't mean every interaction is a positive interaction, but if I knew somebody doesn't like overtime and I needed them to go do it, think about how that changes the interaction from a leader versus just posting a note that says we're having overtime today. If I knew
Mhm.
that, Chris, you don't like overtime, but we needed the whole organization to do it to hit the needs. Hey, Chris, I know you don't like it. We're going to have it for the next 2 days. So, it's a short period of time. Here's why so we can meet our goals in the organization.
Mhm.
So think about if you had all that data and understanding how you change the conversations that you're having with your team members. And then two, when we think about growth, a lot of times the one size fits all annual performance review, don't get me started on it. We don't have enough time for that today. But we set goals for team members that disappear and they're not talked about for a year. A lot of times team members, when we're thinking about team members, and Blanca brought it up, they have the solution. A lot of times they just want the forklifts to work. They want to make sure that when they log into the banking system, that their logins work. It's super simple stuff, but if we can make sure that the Wi-Fi is connected, just think about the productivity gains that we make. And these are real world problems that our team members are dealing with that can help drive improvements inside of the organization. So NextPath takes all of that data of our preferences, our interactions, our goals, how our team members want, and it creates a daily leader path so our leaders know what interactions to have, when to have them, and it summarizes that all up into a visibility center so we can see those inputs when we think about are our leaders able to have the interactions they should have? How do our team members feel about those interactions? So now we can start understanding where we have risk of team members, where we have obstacles of leaders. So back to the assumption that leaders want to do a good job. If they're not able to get their interactions, there's usually an obstacle that's keeping them from doing that, not because they choose not to do it. And those all summarize up to the output to have a more stable team where retention is in place and our cost of turnover is going down. So,
Well, you
um,
mentioned one of our calls a few weeks ago. Excuse me. You mentioned, I think it was a company that had like two facility buildings on opposite sides of the road or something, and
yep.
even just that, like somebody would prefer to stay in the one side, the other person like to move around and have some change of pace, right, or change of scenery, and that even in itself, like that, knowing that as a leader, who should I tap on the shoulder and say, hey, could you go across the street and fill in over there? One person's going to resist that and not like it. The other person's going to thrive because they're like, awesome, I get to go do something different. So I think to your point, it goes back to that customizing your leadership. It's exactly what you just said is now you have a dashboard. Now you have, the ability to track this and to your even with the regular meetings and how to meet and how to effectively interact with people, that's a game changer, right, for leaders who truly want to be a great leader, because I think it sets them up, to your point, of being a better leader because they know their people better, right, and their people are the ones telling them, here's how I engage best. And when the leader sees that, understands that, listens to that, and then operates by that, it's that's got to change that dynamic and that employment environment, like you said, because the one thing we keep hearing, right, is culture, 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 right? What is
Yep.
the workplace culture? And I also love how you add the meaningful side of it, that purpose side of it. That I remember it's been a little while, but I was reading or hearing somebody speak about how if you can connect your personal purpose to your company purpose and have that alignment, just how much you're going to thrive. But so many people, they don't have those connected because a lot of times it hasn't really been, the why behind the work hasn't been explained, as you were mentioning earlier.
Yep.
But
And
you mentioned that. Go
you know
ahead.
what, Ben, what I have experienced is that in the front line, the workers, because of their background, sometimes they have not been able to express themselves. But what I have seen with your tool is that you have given the opportunity to those teams that they have never raised up an issue. Now they have a voice and it's on time. And not only that, independently, you have given them the opportunity to collaborate, express themselves, and just by having that opportunity, they have been felt that the company cares for them. Which the most important thing here is how have the company have helped them to feel cared for, and because of that, the trust is going to be more vivid in the company, and also ultimately the faithfulness to the company. They are going to be um, very delivered to do well for the company, to be
Mhm,
faithful to the company, and guess what? They're not going to leave their employer
mhm.
Yep.
because they're have been hurt, right?
And that's the exact results that we're seeing, Blanca. And just in our conversation, just to that, a lady Hispanic speaking lady for one of our customers had been there for several years in the same role. She actually submitted an obstacle inside the system that she said, I wish I knew how to speak better English so I could communicate and help lead. And we've been, super blessed to work with organizations that are, really trying. And so I was on a call with the customer, just checking in, saying, hey, did you see this? This is really cool that this lady wants to move up in the organization. And the leader goes, I had no idea she wanted to move up. She's never mentioned it to me. And two, she's right. We need to teach her English because that's the only that way she can communicate with the whole team better. So they went and found community college classes that were provided by the state free of charge, and they're sending her to the classes on company time. It's once a week for an hour, right? It's costing them, if we say $25 an hour, it's going to cost them $25 a week. So less than any class or less than anything for her to go learn English so she can get promoted in the organization. Like,
Mhm.
just talk about how simple that is from a solution versus replacing somebody that's going to be 7,000 to 15,000 to in the healthcare industry. We're talking, 50 to $100,000 to replace a frontline nurse. So Blanca,
Ben, are
you're
you seeing,
you're spot on.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you
Yep.
seeing, thinking about the result side of it, are you seeing what are you seeing, I guess, is the right question of the turnover change, right? Like you
Yep.
mentioned, if 47% of people are dissatisfied and that declining and surviving, what are you seeing as the, because now what's really awesome is you've been able to track this for a while. And now you're starting to see those numbers and the data to see that, what's that been like?
Yeah, it's been amazing for start. It's actually better than our initial theory of where we would solve it. We are consistently seeing organizations that have 40% or greater turnover, cutting it almost in half, if not greater, for a few organizations that have really dug in from a participation standpoint. And then inside of that, Chris, we had an organization that was at 40% turnover. They're operating at 13% turnover. And I know people are saying, hey, the economy's changing and elements like that. They literally had to slow down production. So they came to us and said, hey, we've got a problem. We don't want to let anybody go, but we also fiscally can't support keeping everybody. So we came up with a strategy where they were moving people to different facilities that were busy. They were giving people time off, letting them take their vacation early. A few people wanted to take some unpaid time off to go do things they'd never done before. So they gave all these options. They had to make the tough call that they actually cut 30 minutes a day from team members for a month. So like we're affecting people's paychecks. It affected the leaders' paychecks. They made sure everyone saw how we're in it together. They did not lose a single person in the 45 days that they did that. They did see team members go from growing to surviving, and the team members were telling us that obviously, but they kept in constant communication. They explained what they're doing. Every time another opportunity came up that they could get somebody back to their full-time work at one of their other facilities, they did it. So they worked through it. They were able to go back, so volumes back up to normal production levels for them at this point in time. So everyone's getting paid. They're trying to make up their lost wages where they can with overtime based on people that want overtime, right? Um, and so, but in that, they didn't lose a single person. And all they
Mm,
did was change their communication style and then come up with solutions that were people first, right?
mm.
So we're seeing, Chris, the reduction in turnover, even in tough situations, is maintaining flat. We're seeing our team members, how they feel through both physical, like people are willing to tell you. If a lot of times they don't tell you because you've never asked, is what we're finding. But they'll tell us, but we're seeing that 65% increases in team members going from surviving to growing and thriving inside of organizations during that. And then we're seeing productivity gains in the side of millions of dollars by ideas that team members have told us. So to Blanca's point, team members aren't asking for a lot. To be honest, if it's about loading a truck, they want to make sure that we're putting inventory away to make it easy for them. They don't want to deal with obstacles all day either. If we're talking about in office environments, they want to know that when they're planning events and things that are, fundraisers for organizations, that they have the autonomy to make some decisions without everything having to be proved 10 times. So like, how do we make
Have you
processes
heard, this
easy?
was another thought when you were talking a little bit earlier, have you heard from any leaders that even just by having the tool that they're engaging in, that they're maybe more open than like if you just had a direct one-on-one face-to-face conversation, sometimes people won't bring things up, but because there's that app that they can
Yep.
communicate through, is that helping?
So it's funny you say that. We go out and visit a lot of our client, we're young customers, so we like to go out and visit our customers and get feedback and user feedback. And there's this one leader, I could tell right away he's a great guy and a great leader. And when we were talking to him, and he has a huge group, and so I could just see how overwhelmed he was. And I was like, hey man, it's gonna be okay. Like, I promise you're doing better than you think, and it's a crawl, walk, run into this. He came back to me in week 2 and was like, hey Ben, I was actually doing a lot of this. I just didn't know what to talk about. So now I have direction to those conversations. So I always tell people is like, we're not asking for more time. If you're leading people, we're not asking for more time. We're just helping make that time intelligent, right? So that to your Pareto principle of all the plates spinning, let's make sure we're using it at the right conversation at that right time for our team members. And then the other piece is listen, like some of these things are drive-by conversations. If we can interact and log those interactions really quickly, then both a team member can remember it because maybe they're loading a truck or maybe they're interacting with a customer or they're working on a project, or a leader, heard you, Chris, real quick, and then had to go do the next fire that we're putting out every single day. Now, when we're following up on the conversation, we can say, okay, this was what we talked about last time. Here was the goals we set. What obstacles are in place that we haven't been able to get to those goals? Now we can have objective reasoning for team member promotions, right? So now we're making things more fair for people. They can see the data around these things. So we're applying data to that. So I gave you a really long-winded answer
No,
to
that's
that
no, but
question.
that's awesome. But and you do webinars, and we'll get to that in a second,
Yep.
that people can learn more about the solution. But if people are listening to this and they're thinking, this all sounds great, but it still sounds time, it's going to be time
Yep.
consuming. You literally have formulated this where, is it about 15 minutes a month? Is that what you?
S- So yeah, so we have learning content that's micro learning content that transparently is very optional. We recommend it, but these micro learning content that is 15 minutes for 16 modules. It teaches you the whole framework of meaningful employment environment. Really, Chris, it's set at the cadence of which you can operate from your organization. We have to operate the business. We're very aware of that, especially some of our businesses. So it's 15 minutes, whether it's once a week, once a month. We'll work through it. We'll help coach through it, or Chris will help coach through it as part of this, or Blanca as well, just as part of what we're learning about each other is how close this all aligns. But the data and elements will all come to us so we can make organizational decisions. So it's a one pass of meaningful employment environment basics. So we're all on the same page. Team members know how to use it. And then the app is set up based on your organization to use an app or kiosk, whatever works best from a safety perspective, obviously. Um, so with that, just to your point, to your question is, feel free, people can reach out to me at ben@trailpathws.com or Chris or Blanca, either way, and we'll set up a discovery call to connect together at that point in time to understand what your problems are and how our solution can potentially help.
And one of the things that you're doing, and one of the things that Blanca and I are definitely excited about in our relationship with you, is that you guys are saying, look, we are a technology company trying to provide solutions to our customers. We aren't trying to build a coaching company, so to speak,
Yep.
where you're having to employ a bunch of coaches. So what you're doing are looking for like-minded coaches and people that can come alongside you, right, and help. So folks, if you're listening to this, you're saying, okay, the tool is great, but I also want coaching involved. There's options for that as well that's built
Yep.
in too. So as part of that conversation with Ben, you can learn those details. But and I think you told me that there is an upcoming webinar, right?
Yep. So we just as we go into all this, and one real quick point, because I know a lot of these listeners, love Blanca, love Chris, is part of what their work they're doing with you or will be doing with you, like to the coaching point, is we don't want you to lose that relationship. What we found in all of our research is that our learning is very compatible to the methodologies that Blanca and Chris are taking. So there would be no gaps in any of that. So we want you to work with coaches that you're familiar with as well, and that's why we've created such a good partnership to date. Um, but with that, to Chris's question there, just we do have a webinar. It's the next one is about your organizational strategy. So in this, people always talk about, hey, I'm going to do this for all my team members, but I need to measure my ROI behind all this, which makes complete sense. We are running a business. So our webinar is coming up. You can understand it. It's on LinkedIn, but it's on 9/18, and it's about future-proofing your operations strategy. So how do we bring our team members involved to our operations strategy as we move forward, understanding their unique preferences and all the pieces that NextPath can provide. So you can register on our TrailPath Workplace Solutions page on LinkedIn is the easiest place to do
Awesome.
that.
And we'll put these links in the show notes and everything
Yep.
too, so people can go right
Yeah.
to them. But and then do you do webinars every so often? Is that kind
Yep.
of the
So
flow
we've
of
been
things?
kind of just as we're a young company. I won't call us a startup anymore, but we'll be a young company. So we're obviously trying to share real practical and operational strategies that apply to people. So we're about once a month. We're putting out a webinar through LinkedIn right now. So,
Awesome. And I just want to bring that up
Yeah.
too, because you might, if somebody's listening and it's past September 18th,
yep.
this year, is if they can just reach out to you or follow you guys on LinkedIn, they can keep up to date with what you guys have coming out, right?
They sure can, and they can go to past episodes as well.
Awesome.
So,
That's great.
yep.
Blanca, any final words from you as you've been, with us today and sharing some insights?
Well, let me tell you, my final words would say is really hard to create loyalty. Is really hard. And that's why the turnaround is so challenging, right? But I think that with your tool, you're raising up a really good opportunity for companies to eliminate the gap between the communications. Is on time, which is super important. It doesn't take any extra leadership time because it's a tool that they have available on their hand. It's an app, and so it's something really useful. It's something easy to understand. Not only is in English, but also is in
Yep.
Spanish,
The
which
very
most of the times there is a big gap between the communication with the upper level and American companies because the language barrier. And now the employees will be able to say, this is what I need to perform. Your production will be um, increased just because you gave me a tool in my language that I can express myself easier. So communications are going to be definitely improved, and the loyalty obviously is going to increase. So I think it's amazing.
Oh, thank
You,
you.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ben, thanks again for being with us today. I know, like I said at the beginning, we've been enjoying our conversations that we haven't been recording like this, but
Yep.
it's just been amazing to see that there is such synergy out there to, and like I said, bringing leadership, culture, that meaningful employment, workplace environment, all and technology, all bringing it all together, right? I mean, I think is so huge in our world today, and I think making things smoother, better for leaders, making things better to flow that communication, and even suggestions from the front line up to the senior leadership even. you know, I'm super excited about what you guys have developed, and I know that you keep fine tuning it because the data keeps coming in to give you more and more information, which is awesome. Because now you're like, hey, these are the results we're seeing, these are the challenges we're seeing. Let's keep fine tuning this. So this is a living, kind of a living, breathing thing that you're building continually, which is exciting. So, folks,
Very much.
like I said, we'll have Ben's contact information and the LinkedIn page and all that stuff in the show notes if you want to learn more about that. But Ben, thanks again for being with us. And Blanca, thanks
No,
for
thank you.
being my wonderful co-host once again.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
no,
fun, so fun. And it's so incredible to introduce companies a new tool that is really meaningful for frontline employees.
Absolutely.
oh, well, thank you. Thank you both. I appreciate the time that we had. And obviously, like I said, I enjoy our conversation. So thanks for having me today.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Chris.